It's chaos.
It's a different type of Sunday scary.
It's your newest obsession.
It's Dirty Driving, a Formula One podcast.
We're the Hornsby sisters. I'm Katie.
And I'm Megan.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We are back. It's the day after Barcelona. We have a lot to talk about, but let's start with where the fuck Katie is right now.
Yes, I'm currently sitting in a hallway of my hotel in Las Vegas. I went to EDC this weekend. The best part about the whole weekend is that my hotel's name is The D. So yeah, I'm in the hallway. I apologize for any background noise, but I've been following Barcelona this week, and obviously we're here recording to put out an episode. So that's that.
She's staying in a hotel that was named after Dirty Driving, the D.
The D.
And I'm just gonna ask everybody, I don't care where you're watching the podcast, or not watching, listening, watching, I don't know what you're doing. Give her a round of applause for just like how she's managed to not only do the EDC, but also
thank you so much for
the
listening
race.
to another
Seriously,
episode.
I'm saying,
don't
give
forget
her
to
a round of
subscribe
applause
and follow
now,
us
right now.
at
Do
Dirty
it.
Driving Pod on Twitter
Be that
and Instagram.
person.
Until next time.
Please be that person.
Stay
because
dirty.
I have been awake since 2 p.m. yesterday. It's Monday morning at 8 a.m. So here we are. We're recording the episode. It was a great weekend, and I got to catch the race, and so that's what we're here to talk about. As always, we're here to talk about Formula One.
Let's talk about F1. Before we get that, I mean, you guys probably know where I was. I was back in Tres Equis. I feel like that place is my home. I live there on race mornings. This one was actually pretty tame. It's pretty quiet. Small group of us, committed group of us, rainy Sunday morning in St. Louis for the race. Honestly, not mad about it, because when I heard the temperatures on track, I was kind of thankful I had to wear a sweater.
Yeah, it's been warm here, but it gets chilly at night, so I've honestly just been vibing, listening to music. I'm bobbing my head right now. Like, I literally cannot stop moving. So I'm excited to be sitting and talking to Megan about the race that was Barcelona and how insane it was compared to the previous races that we've had.
Okay, so before we get into Barcelona, we have some things we need to chat about off the top of this. Okay, let's start with McLaren announcing that they're starting a Formula E. Well, they're not starting. They're purchasing the Mercedes Formula E team for the 2023 season. But more importantly, Katie, we're going to start this episode on a low note. There are some rumors that that's because Daniel Ricciardo will move to it. I can't.
It's hard for me to imagine a world where Daniel Ricciardo is in Formula E, but I could also see where I'm excited for it, because that will make me watch Formula E and really truly become a fan of that. So hard to picture, makes me sad, but I'm looking for the silver lining of it all.
It really makes me really sad, but also it does. There's kind of two conflicting things. One, I'm really proud of the fact, because I just saw McLaren's post that after this weekend, Daniel Ricciardo is the Australian with like the most Grand Prix starts. So shout out to Daniel Ricciardo. Let's get another round of applause for Danny Rick on that one. But no, this might be my real ticket into watching Formula E. I followed it a little bit because of Italian Jesus, but I truthfully think if Daniel Ricciardo goes to Formula E, like this might become a Formula E podcast. I'm kidding.
Yeah, we might just, well, I don't know. We might just have to start talking about it a little bit more.
Whole Formula E segments that we're going to call them Danny Rick Goes to Formula E.
Love it.
I love it. I'm here for it. Second thing we need to talk about, Katie. Second thing important we need to chat about. F1 has officially decided not to replace the Russian Grand Prix. So this year we will only have 22 races. I feel like this is a good thing.
Yeah, like, let's just have an extra week break for not only us, but for the drivers and the engineers and everybody. And they're already zigzagging so much across the globe as it is. Why try to reschedule something when, I don't I don't know. The whole argument of 23 races is a lot. I feel like 22 will be just fine this year.
Honestly, I feel like insert Taylor Swift. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling 22. 22 and 22 just seems like kind of perfect. Also, I think it's important to note that Christian Horner did do an interview where he said that the budget cap is going to become an issue at the end. Like teams, not just the big teams, are going to run out of money this year. There's been a lot of talk about development money, some incorrect statements about how much Red Bull has spent. We're going to get into that in a bit, but I do think just recognizing that let's not shove another race back in there is smart, considering the financial concerns. But also, like, shit, we might take a full stop break that week and just be like, hey, siesta that week.
A full siesta. I love it.
I think everyone might need it at that point in the season.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, Katie, let's chat Barcelona next.
All right, so it is the 52nd Spanish Grand Prix. This Grand Prix has been held at 5 different venues, and it's bounced back between Barcelona, Madrid, Barcelona, Juarez, and now it is just a few miles outside of the city at the Circuit de Barcelona. There are 4 current winners on the grid. Hamilton has taken 6 wins here, 5 consecutive between 2017 and 2021. Alonso has taken 2 wins in 2006 and 2013. Verstappen took his first win back in 2016. And then, of course, Vettel took a win with Red Bull in 2011. Something that was kind of surprising to me is that the most winning constructor is Ferrari with 12 wins. And for those of you who maybe don't pay that much attention to preseason or don't know, this is the spot where most of the regular winter testing takes place. It's the official winter testing location due to the nice climate, and it's got a mix of corners that are good to test the car and driver ability.
This weekend, Charles Leclerc entered the the Spanish Grand Prix. I hate that I call it the Barcelona Grand Prix. It's just like ingrained in my memory. But Leclerc entered 19 points ahead of Verstappen, but is actually leaving Barcelona behind Verstappen. Oh, that's super unfortunate. Verstappen currently sits at 110 point and Leclerc is at 104. So that's a 6-point difference. And the driver champion has flipped for the first time this year. Ferrari entered this weekend 6 points ahead of Red Bull, but Red Bull is leaving 26 points up on Ferrari, and those 26 points are direct, like that 26, that number is just like Leclerc's victory right there. Leclerc's victory in a fastest lap that equals 26. Like, that hurts. This is Verstappen's 4th win of the season, his 3rd in a row. He continues his reign, or whatever you want to call it, his streak, I don't know, of winning every race that he finishes. But he also ended Mercedes' reign in Barcelona. Like Katie had mentioned, Hamilton had won 5 years in a row. This is 6 years after his first career win in his debut race at the Barcelona Grand Prix, the Spanish Grand Prix in 2016. Shit. Weird. This is something that Formula One put out in one of their articles that I was like, I don't know if I like this, but I'm going to mention it because we're going to have to talk about. This is his 24th win, but more importantly, Formula One threw some epic shade here and said this gives him more victories than his girlfriend Kelly Piquet's dad.
That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous that someone wrote those words and published them on the internet.
But I'm also like, so who exactly is this shade being thrown at? Is it like the shade at Verstappen that like, hey, yo, at this point, Nelson Piquet had 24 wins and 3 world champions, and you're only a one-time fake world champion with 24? Or is this shade on like, I don't know where the share is. This like shade on like Nelson Piquet? Like, it feels like there's some shade being thrown here. And also like F1 content writers, why did you just have this stat in your back pocket waiting to like blam throw it on a page?
It's too much. It truly is too much to think about. Like, don't even get me started on the whole drama of how Kelly and Max started dating. But like, don't compare him to his father. That's just like crossing the line.
No, that's so. Moving on. I'm just going to make noises and move on. More importantly, this weekend, or not more importantly, I don't really know. I don't know if that stat was important. I can't stop thinking about it. I don't know. Everybody needs to let me know their thoughts on that stat after you listen to this episode. I'm so curious. This weekend saw another Red Bull 1-2. It's the second of the year with Checo taking P2. We're going to talk about Checo's race. Don't worry. I've got some thoughts. It might be a hot take for me. It might be a dirty take. It might just be a normal Megan Rose Hornsby take on these things. The podium was rounded out by George Russell in P3. And really this weekend felt like a Mercedes comeback in terms of development and specifically race recovery. Lewis Hamilton battled from P19 to P5 after first lap contact with Kevin Magnussen. And Carlos Sainz, what could have been. Sainz battled back from P11 to P4 after going wide in T4 after a gust of wind. A different gust of wind, same spot for the gust of wind, affected Max Verstappen, who did not suffer as negatively as Carlos, unfortunately. Let's get into upgrades. I'm just going to keep rolling through these upgrades. The first thing that we must talk about, we can't have this episode without discussing, is Aston Martin. They brought a car looking suspiciously like a green Red Bull, which is strange because of that team's history of, what should we say, changing the color and making a car that is very similar to another team, Pink Mercedes. I think this is a good opportunity to plug our last week episode about Aston Martin. I swear I was so pissed when this green Red Bull got rolled out. I was like, are you effing kidding me, Aston Martin? You couldn't have done this 1 week sooner, so we would have, or 2 weeks sooner, so we would have had more content for that episode, but we move on. I'm going to point out here and slightly defend Aston Martin because the FIA defended them and Lance Stroll came to their defense saying that actually this design of this car that looks suspiciously like a Red Bull was in their wind tunnel for testing back in November. They actually had two designs that they were testing. They started with their Spec A, which is what we saw from testing all the way through Miami, and this was their Spec B. They've decided to go with the second version because they didn't really like the first version of the car that they put out onto the grid. The FAA launched an investigation, and ultimately, after reviewing it, trying to decide if there was any reverse engineering, any illicit IP transfer, because there were quite a number of Red Bull engineers that moved from Red Bull to Aston Martin. One of which was the current chief technical officer of Aston Martin just left Red Bull and started his job in April after like a period of leave. The FIA did conclude that Aston Martin's upgrades were compliant and were completely legal. So that is a big thing to note. The FAA did put out this statement after lots of shade was thrown by some spicy Red Bull comments. You know who I'm talking about, Senator Palpatine, back at it again with his drama-inducing statements. We'll leave it there. But also Red Bull bringing out the green dragon fruit flavor for Friday on the pit wall to drink. Like, did they have that? Did they have that flown in?
That was literally helicoptered in. It had to have been. Simply had to have been.
I mean, it had to be brought in from Austria. There's no doubt in my mind that was not, or unless they have all the flavors in the back office. It was great. I loved it. I thought it was petty. I thought it was hilarious. I also just thought it was like the perfect shithousery for the weekend. It was great.
Yeah, it was a perfect touch. Like, subtle enough, but they struck hot.
I also think this is one of the reasons why I love this sport is that shit like this is just like cash.
Yeah.
Talking about those Aston Martins, they looked good on Friday. They were shit on Saturday. Neither car managed to get out of Q1. On Sunday, we had a performance from Vettel. Good, really good tire management strategy, but really only time will tell if they will be able to develop this B spec of a car and really be able to find performance in this one that they weren't finding in their A spec. On to the next team. I'm not going to go through all 10, I'll be honest. I'm just doing the highlights here. Mercedes, they brought some upgrades. They were successful. I mean, definitely successful. They are closing the gap. They are not yet at Ferrari or Red Bull, but really, truthfully, they have fixed their problems, and now they are actually moving into development mode. Hamilton commented that it is a much smoother ride now. He's not bumping around like he's at EDC like Katie. McLaren brought a shit ton of upgrades. Norris was actually in the full upgrade package, and Ricciardo was running a partial upgrade package. One of the big items to note that was brought was a new floor that Norris had, but Ricciardo didn't. We're going to talk about how Norris fucked up that floor on Friday and had to get a new one flown in. Alfa Romeo brought a host of upgrades, and trust me, those Alfa Romeos are looking quick. Valtteri is performing well, and he is pushing the Alfa Romeo up to the top of the midfield, putting that car into P5 in the race. At one point, he was running in P4. At one point, I think he was in P3, if I remember correctly. I don't know why this is blanking in the top of my head. At one point, I was manifesting a Valtteri Bottas podium and saying I'd buy shots for the whole bar. That was the low point of Sunday morning. Or a high point. Take it as you want. Haas was the only team not to have any upgrades. They have been really clear that they are on a much different development strategy than everybody else. They are waiting to better understand the car, as they had pace at the beginning of the season. We know that. We saw it in practice. We saw it in the first couple races, but it seems like they lost the understanding of the car. They might have pushed the envelope a little too much, and they kind of lost the ball a touch. They're trying to get that back before they bring any upgrades. It looks like they're signaling that we're going to get some upgrades in 4 to 5 races. I'm hoping for like 3 or 4 races, but it'll be interesting to see. At one point, Mick was running in the points. Both of them got into Q3, so it seems like maybe they're getting a handle on the pace. It's just the pace and qualities. It's just that race performance they need to work on. Magnussen, I'm going to kind of throw out what happened to him this weekend. He was just on the back foot after the contact with Lewis. Last up in terms of updates, I know this is a lot to go through, but it seems like this was an update-heavy weekend. It was what they called Sam Collins' Christmas, as he walked through all 10 teams in FP1, which, let me tell you, shout out to Sam Collins for that impressive performance, because it was epic that he was able to do it all. Let's talk Ferrari and Red Bull together. I'm going to bunch them because they are the top 2 teams. They're developing against each other, but a lot of their comments have been, in the context of what one another is doing. Both of them brought upgrades this weekend. Ferrari brought their first major set of upgrades this weekend, featuring a new floor. They also brought a new higher downforce rear wing. We know that's difficult for me to say, which they did test in a filming day, which was ahead of Monza. The FAA did clear them, saying that was legal. Red Bull is on a much different, development strategy. Ferrari has essentially brought nothing but minor setup tweaks until now, where Red Bull has been slowly drip feeding parts into the RB18 and have been really working on cutting weight, which Max Verstappen in an interview called cutting the fat. I thought that was funny. But that very different development strategy has led to some rumors, which I'm going to squash right now. At Miami, there was a rumor going around that Red Bull had used 75% of their development budget. We've learned that is completely untrue, and actually sources are saying that Red Bull has so far used no more than 18% of their budget. Much better position in terms of percentage of budget spent, and they are rumored to be planning a major upgrade coming for Silverstone. So which is 4th of July weekend for us Americans. So that gives you a point of reference on when we're going to see that. Binotto, Ferrari, is not actually worried about these Red Bull developments at all. He made a comment, and this is where I think the development strategy is fascinating to me. Binotto made a comment that he isn't worried about Red Bull because Red Bull is going to hit a development wall because of the budget cap much sooner than the Scuderia. So the Scuderia is going to be able to outdevelop them at the end of the season. So they're playing the long game. They're focusing on long-term development strategy and are probably planning on having something big like the last, like 5 races to go to get that last little push. I'll be interested to see if that works, if they follow through with that strategy. It's kind of fascinating because now they have a budget cap to contend with. I will say that, all of Red Bull has hit back on this kind of idea. Christian Horner saying that, all teams are going to face financial constraints at the end. Max Verstappen saying that there's still plenty left in the tank in terms of development, that he's not worried. But it's fascinating to me. I'm very intrigued by this whole like chess game of development. So we'll see what happens.
Nicely done, Megan.
Yeah. I was pretty excited about the upgrades this weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, they all came out and showed us what the upgrades were capable of doing. The coolest thing to me about this whole race, which I know we're going to talk about it a little later, is that there were no safety cars. And so we saw these cars and these upgrades running the whole entire race without a break, full throttle the whole entire time.
It was really interesting without safety cars. And I also think that it was really fascinating to have, we knew Barcelona for most of the teams was going to be a target because it was the best place for them to be able to compare what has happened over the last weeks to, where they started back in February. They also knew that the conditions of the Barcelona track were going to be much different. And truthfully, if upgrades work in Barcelona, they're going to translate to a lot of other tracks. That's why they use Barcelona as a testing place. It's a good track. It has a good mix of corners. They're able to see if the car's balance is right, how they handle in medium, low, and fast speed corners. I also think that, and I'm going to kind of like caution everybody, like next weekend is Monaco, which is a very different track. So, we've had this host of upgrades this weekend. So if things don't go well for a certain team next weekend, that is definitely not representative that these upgrades didn't work. Monaco is a one-off. It's a weird track. We know that. It is all about qualifying there. It is all about track position there. So just caution to don't freak out if your team had a host of upgrades this weekend and shits the bed next weekend.
That's a perfect way of putting it. Monaco is Monaco.
Hell, the way things go at Monaco, I wouldn't be surprised if we finally we see some shit we didn't really think. Honestly, I'm manifesting a Valtteri Bottas win in Monaco.
Oh, that would be excellent. I would love to see that.
I don't know. I feel like that would be kind of crazy to see. I would also love to see like a Lando Norris or a Danny Ricciardo win. Just like somebody not in the top 3 teams, just because I think it would make things a little bit spicier going into the race after, which is Baku, which, I think could be a Mercedes weekend. I've got some thoughts.
Oh.
I don't know. Toto Wolff is looking way too happy.
All right. Well, I'm excited to see what happens then, if that's what you're thinking.
I've got some thoughts. I don't know if they're good ones. Okay, Katie, I'm going to go Friday and Saturday and then give it to you for the race. So, Friday.
Love it.
FP1, we had Charles Leclerc, who went fastest. I'm not going to talk about the whole lineup of results, but I think what's interesting and something I want to talk about a lot more is the gaps from P3 or P4 to P1 in terms of practice times in these weekends of big development. So Leclerc was fastest, then it was Sainz, and then it was Verstappen. But the gap from P3 to P1 was 0.3 of a second. So they're close early Friday morning. And that session was very unrepresentative of what qualifying was going to look like and the race just in terms of track temperatures. Comparatively, that was the cooler of the sessions. So not a huge indicator of what we were going to see. Notes from FP1 that are big to shout out here. We saw the AlphaTauris and the McLarens looking good, which gave me a little bit of hope for this weekend early on, but then I had to like tell myself like the track is cool, the track is cool, the track is cool, the track is cool. We also had 3 reserve drivers in. So Williams ran Nick DeVries, Red Bull ran Juri Vips, which I'm probably mispronouncing that, and Alfa Romeo saw Robert Kubica. We know that Nick DeVries and Juri Vips were part of the like young drivers program. They're mandatory sessions where they have to run a rookie driver who hasn't started in 2 Grand Prix in terms of like for development, in terms of seeing and giving them opportunities in a car. So I loved seeing both of them in the car. And I also really loved seeing Nick DeVries in the commentary. I think he was pre-qualies, post-race, if I remember that correctly. I really loved his questions. He asked some really tough questions of the drivers, and I just loved his analysis, and I hope he gets a drive soon, as he is the current Formula E champion from last year and a Mercedes reserve driver. Also in FP1, we did start to begin to see that performance out of those Mercedes. In FP1, it was interesting to note that they tested 3 different front wings in that session. Russell ran 1, Hamilton ran 1, and then they both ran the Miami front wing. So they both ran new ones, and then they both ran the Miami front wing. So it was definitely a data gathering session. And let me tell you, when Mercedes says that they're working on data gathering, you should be fucking scared. That's all I'm going to say. FP2 in the afternoon was a much, much, much more representative time, or a much more representative session in terms of what the race was going to be like in terms of track temperature, and really much more representative for qualies. Here we saw Charles Leclerc go fastest again on Friday, but then we had Russell and Hamilton behind him. The gap from P1 to P3 Hamilton to Leclerc was 0.2 of a second. So here we see those Mercedes performance starting to kick in. Like I said, the track temperatures were much, much warmer than that morning temperature. And here we also note that the porpoising was significantly reduced. They really only faced it going into turn 1 after that long straight. That is a quite bumpy part of the track, but even Hamilton commented that it was much less than it had been previously. So it seems like they have started to fix that issue and can move forward. I'm going to take a step back from FP2 for a second and say that Carlos Sainz going into this weekend was really outspoken and said that like porpoising had taken an effect on drivers' health this season. I'm not surprised by that at all. Bouncing up and down constantly as you're hitting those G's, completely logical that would happen. 2 incidents to note in FP2. We had a red flag brought out by Valtteri. He had smoke, then his engine shut off. This was really unfortunate for Alfa Romeo because it was definitely, with all of those upgrades, it was definitely important for Alfa Romeo to have their veteran driver out there being able to give them feedback on those upgrades that feel. So it was unfortunate that he wasn't able to continue. He was able to put in 1 good flying lap, but that was all he got for that session. The second incident to note was Lando Norris. Went off onto a curb into the gravel. He damaged that new floor I mentioned. He was out of the car, out of the session, and really lots of questions came about it if McLaren had brought a backup floor. We know that it damaged the chassis. They had to take the power unit off. Turns out that they had to bring in a new chassis and a new floor overnight, which they were able to do, and he was able to get out for FP3. A blow to Lando Norris this weekend. We're going to talk about him. There's lots to talk about Norris. Don't worry. Saturday morning, FP3. Here we have Leclerc going fastest again. So he was fastest in all 3 sessions. Then we had Verstappen, Russell, and Hamilton. Important to note here, the gap from P4 to P1 was 0.2. Hamilton to Leclerc was 0.2. So that gap between Mercedes and Red Bull and Mercedes and Ferrari is skinny now. It's small. I don't think they're there in race pace. They still are like Hamilton's still like 33 seconds off of Verstappen based on some data that I saw, but it's there. Important to note here, like I said, Norris was able to be back on track. Gasly wasn't able to get out, if I remember correctly. He might have gotten out no, he did not. He did not, because there was smoke in the garage. It was coming out of the rear and it smelled like electrical and carbon. I can't imagine how awful that like metallic insulation burning smell would be. And it turned out to just be like some insulation. And then we also had Schumacher had his right rear brakes on fire, just like Albon has had and Latifi has had this year. So it's interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if we have like an FIA investigation in terms of like right rear brake safety. It's just kind of becoming like a little too commonplace. Now let's get into qualifying. I'm going to do this real quick because qualifying, we'll just do this one real quick for everybody. Charles Leclerc was on pole position, and let me tell you, I think this is one of his better pole position performances. He was the only driver to break into the 118s on Friday and Saturday, and I'm pretty sure he was the only one for the weekend to bring it into the 118s, if I'm remembering correctly. He definitely was the first of the weekend. He ended the Mercedes pole position streak, which went back to 2013 with Nico Rosberg. Lining up in second is Verstappen, in third is Sainz, and fourth is Russell. So how did we get there? Q1, let's talk it through. It was hot as shit. Those drivers were looking rough, and they were very honest and open about the fact that it was tricky with tire temps, and drivers had to be careful not to overheat them. Basically, the soft tires were like a one hot lap special. They went out there, they put a hot lap, they did an out lap, and they were back in. There was no ability to try for two on a pair of softs. Out in Q1 was Vettel, Alonso, Stroll, Albon, and Latifi. So both green Red Bulls were out. So even though they looked a little bit like a Red Bull, doesn't mean they had the performance of a Red Bull. It was also a really rough break for Fernando Alonso in front of his home crowd. Honestly, it was a massive misunderstanding and miscommunication. He was out in traffic and just got screwed on that. Alonso, after the fact, said the team that he had a 1 or 2 second margin to get across the line, but they actually had a 20-second margin. So he was donezo. Smart move by Alpine, though. They ended up taking a new power unit to start at the back of the grid, and that ended up working in Alonso's favor, which Katie will talk to you about in a second. Q2, Norris had just an unfortunate break. He was able to put up a good time right at the end of Q2, but then had that time deleted. Sergio Perez also had a lap time deleted, but that didn't drop him out of the top 10. So unfortunately, he was moved from P9, if I'm remembering correctly, down to P11, which promoted Schumacher back up to P10 to get into Q3 for the first time. But we also saw both Kevin Magnussen and Schumacher in Q3 for the first time together. It was great. Additionally, out in Q2, like I said, Norris, Ocon, Tsunoda, Gasly, and Zhou. Tsunoda out-qualifying Gasly. In Q3, this was a rough one for me to watch. Rough. We have Leclerc spinning due to some oversteer, and he just like really lost it. So he had no time on the board. Let me tell you, my heart was racing for him. He was just like, I was like, you got to go out there instead of fly, or you got to be on the limit. You have to go for it, but you have to stay under control, stay within don't let the pressure get to you. You can't overcook it, or you're going to be starting P10, and that's going to be a battle up. Especially because this was a track where historically, like, pole position has won. I think like 18 out of the last 32 have won from pole position. Let's talk it through. So Leclerc has no time on the board. Verstappen puts a time up. He's on provisional pole, but unfortunately has a DRS issue, which causes him to abort his final lap of qualifying, preventing him from challenging Charles Leclerc. Like I said, Leclerc had that one lap, that one chance. He does it. It was some massive damage limitation. He salvages pole to be able to start in P1. Unfortunately, we all know how that race turns out for him. Ricciardo did make it to Q3. He started P9. This is the first time this year that he has outqualified his teammate. And then Russell actually was able to qualify ahead of both Perez and Hamilton in P4. So kind of a crazy Friday and Saturday. Lots going on, lots to talk about.
And the craziness continued on Sunday because it was lights out and away we went. It was a fairly even start between Max and Charles, with Charles in the lead. But Verstappen was on his tail. Luckily for us, Leclerc was ahead in turn 1 and kept the advantage against Max. Carlos Sainz was passed by George Russell. Then we saw Carlos Sainz battle Hamilton. Kevin Magnussen went off in the gravel with a run-in with Hamilton's front left, which caused a puncture. The incident was noted by the stewards, but no further action was taken, and Hamilton noted to his team that they should save the engine. So early on, he had to let off, which I'm going to talk about a little later. The whole race, like I mentioned earlier, we saw plenty of drivers in the gravel. It started in lap 7 with Fernando almost going in, and then Carlos Sainz shunting, like Megan mentioned, due to a big gust of wind. In lap 9, we saw the exact same thing, big gust of wind with Max in the gravel in the same spot, turn 4. Also in lap 9, we saw some exciting battles between Sergio Perez and George Russell. They battled back and forth, super clean racing, and kind of reminded me why George Russell was selected to go to Mercedes in the first place. It was nice to see him battling again. And then for a majority of the race and for a while on Saturday, Max Verstappen was unable to open his DRS flaps. Max was driving angry and very edgy. It was pretty clear. And it doesn't really do Max any good to drive angry. We know that. We know that from last year, I guess I should say. All right. And then we saw a stunning driving and great defense between Max and George, with Russell being dubbed the new Minister of Defense. Lap 27, we had Charles Leclerc losing power and had to ultimately retire the car, ending the race for him, which I know struck a bone with Megan. When I watched late, I was so upset. And, you know, I'm going to mention this later, but I want to mention it now. Drake placed a bet on Charles Leclerc to win and lost, and that kind of blew up the internet a little bit. On the very next lap, we had Russell leading the Grand Prix up until lap 31, where Perez got around him. In lap 31, Guan Yu Zhao also DNF'd. And then we're going to jump ahead because my heart got absolutely crushed during lap 48 when Perez said over the radio in response to team orders, "That's very unfair, but okay." So it seems that Perez does not want to get on the bad side of Max Verstappen or Christian Horner and let Max through as he was instructed.
You mean the bad side of Senator Palpatine?
Or the bad side of Senator Palpatine. I left him off the list. He scares me.
He's literally the one that would like cut you down with a lightsaber.
All right, in the second to last lap, George Russell had a huge DNF risk. They thought it was the cooling package, and the cooling issues were back, like Hamilton had to lift off earlier. They thought it was brake temperature or low on gas, but it turns out it was a water leak on the power unit that caused all of this. Carlos was able to get ahead of Lewis as well. And then that brings us to the final lap of the race. Max Verstappen won the Grand Prix, as Megan said, victorious for the 24th time in history. And Red Bull took the 1-2, with Russell taking his second podium of the season in third place. And again, this race really reminded me why he went to Mercedes. He's the only driver to finish in the top 5 thus far. And then, like I said, with Drake betting, I personally did not place any bets this weekend. Was too busy dancing. But he placed a $300,000 bet on Charles winning with the odds of 2.5. It was his very first F1 bet, and he lost it. So I don't know, like, the need to share on Instagram why he placed his first F1 bet, but hey, more publicity for F1 in general.
I'll be honest, I was at like a crawfish boil on Saturday night, and I was like looking through someone's betting app, and every scenario that I would have bet on had Leclerc winning because of just the precedence of pole position leading to a victory. So I'm very thankful that I did not step in terms of Katie and place any bets, because I would have been very peeved. The one bet that I am mad that I didn't place, that I was like, this could be just kind of fun, was both Mercedes in the top 6. I'm like actually mad because I was like, I could just like throw $50 on that. I would have made a lot of money.
Yeah. Next weekend, we'll be back on the betting for Monaco.
Are we?
Yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Okay, so at the beginning of this Formula One season, I was very comfortable with my lead in the fantasy, but now it's turned into this neck and neck race between Megan and I. So she's made her Brazilian comeback pretty much, or she's very close to completing it. I have 5,478 points, dropping to 5th place, and Megan has 5,410 points. She is still in 6th, so I'm just right above her. It's kind of like last year with Max and Lewis. Only 68 points separate us now with lots of races left, so this has turned into quite the nail biter. Big shout out to Smooth Operator, who is leading, followed by our older brother, my older brother, Gavin.
It's happening. Qualifying Brazil 2021 has occurred. I have mounted it. I have gotten close. I can see it, and I have a plan. Don't worry, I'm not going to share that plan, but I will say that my best play this week was picking up George Russell, but was also choosing Valtteri Bottas as my talent driver. Truthfully, I have chosen him 3 times this year, 3 or 4 times, if I'm remembering correctly. We all know my memory is kind of questionable. And I'll just put it out there. He's been clutch as fuck all year for a talent driver. So, because the way the talent drivers work is you have to be under a certain salary threshold to be able to choose them. And he's been under that certain salary threshold, but has been performing like someone who should be above that salary threshold. So awesome plays for me. Yeah, don't worry. It is happening.
Yeah, and I need to remember to start selecting my talent driver because this is the second weekend that I've now forgot.
That's essentially like her DRS isn't working.
Essentially. But my best play of the week was having Max on my team, so I got something. I got some points.
Okay. And that brings us to our race questions of the week. I think we're going to start off not talking about the race. We're going to do one that's a little bit of some just general FIA Formula One shiz. So motorsport.com published an article saying that Formula One is trying to make the schedule like essentially more intelligent by grouping races by region to avoid the random standalones like we had with Miami, where we were randomly taken to the US for a one-off before then whisked back to Europe for the Barcelona Grand Prix. So do we actually think this is going to happen, Katie? Like, do you actually think F1 is going to be able to pull this off and making the calendar a little bit more intelligent?
You know, this is something that we've talked about before. I truly hope so because it just makes more sense intelligently. Like, it just makes more sense to travel, and it would be easier on the drivers, especially if they keep kind of in the same chunk of time zones. So will they be able to pull it off with scheduling and planning with the cities? I'm not sure, but I definitely hope that we get to see it sooner rather than later. I would guess maybe not next year, but the following year we could see more of this grouping of races together.
This strategy was actually revealed by Stefano Domenicali on Saturday morning on his Coffee with the Team Principals, which I do think is kind of adorable that he does that. It's almost like coffee with the boss or coffee with the boss's boss. I think it's going to be really difficult, especially in terms of like North America, because there's never a time where I want to have COTA and Miami bump up against each other. Like the benefit of having Miami early in the season and Austin at the end of the season is that Americans can afford to go to both. I don't know how that changes. Well, I don't know if anyone can afford Miami, so that statement might just be kind of useless. It might be smarter to kind of do like Montreal and Miami in the spring, and then in the fall do kind of some like COTA, Mexico, Brazil, back to Vegas situation, because we'll have Vegas next year. I also don't know how this works with the Middle East, starting in the Middle East, ending in the Middle East. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know if Abu Dhabi is ever going to like be okay with not being the ender of the season. I also don't know how China plays into this with the COVID situation. I also don't know how this works out with the European races. Also, Monaco has traditionally been at the end of May. So how do they make all of this work and balance the schedule? A lot to figure out. But it something needs to change. It needs to at least, I would even take like a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I feel like next year may be a little better, like I said, but grouping all of these is going to be quite difficult. All right, Megan, I've got one question for you. Are Mercedes back?
Oh, I knew she was going to throw this because she knows I'm such a George Russell and Lewis Hamilton fan. Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to go through this really quickly because I kind of want to save a lot of this conversation for later on in the season. But they definitely have the pace. We saw it this weekend. We definitely saw the Mercedes pace. They are not up to where Ferrari and Red Bull are. If you look at the data, I didn't pull this data, but someone did. And they said that Lewis Hamilton is still 33 seconds off from, it's either Max or Charles. I think it is Max. So it's clear that they're not at Ferrari and Red Bull yet, and Red Bull aren't even at Ferrari yet because Charles Leclerc has the pace on Verstappen. So to me, it is a step in the right direction. George Russell made a comment that said that this is actually like the start of their season because they're moving from like fixing the car to actually developing the car. And now that we have the Barcelona like baseline for improvement, I think we're going to see that development starting to play a role. I don't expect to see anything at Monaco because it's Monaco. Like, who knows what the hell is going to happen there. I am thinking that we could see a Mercedes weekend in Baku. I think that would be really impressive and would be really like a milestone for them. But this weekend we saw it. I mean, George Russell was P3. He got his second podium of the year. He's the only driver to be in the top 5 or to be in the points at every race this year, which I know he said is kind of like a meaningless statistic, but I do think it shows that he's been maximizing that car's performance. So give him a car that is good, is competitive. What are we going to see from him? I mean, and then talking about Hamilton, like everybody was, not everybody, but the internet was like, Hamilton's gone. Make the guy retire. You should retire. He's done. Clearly, the dude shouldn't retire. Did you see his race this weekend? He went from P19 to P4. He almost had, or P5. He almost had P4, but he had to lift and coast due to that water leak issue in the car. But realistically, like that was a great drive for him. He didn't have a safety car to bunch up the pack. He had to really maximize his tire strategy. He wanted to retire. He made a comment. He's like, I think we should save the engine. But he didn't give up. And then he was able to have a race recovery and put him back in the points. And not even just back in the points, but in P5. So, yeah, no, I don't want to officially say Mercedes are back, but I say Mercedes are on their way to being back. And like I said, what works in Barcelona is a good indicator of development and improvement for other tracks. So hopefully Baku will see more.
Yeah, I really think that this weekend was a turning point for Mercedes. Just like you said, we're really starting to see the pace come out of the car, and you're exactly right. Like this weekend, I was reminded why George Russell went to Mercedes. Not that I haven't been reminded all season with how well he's been performing, but just watching him drive, I can't wait to see what happens when that car takes it up yet another level for both of them, for both Hamilton and George.
I mean, seriously, give Lewis a car that's developing or that's much more developed, and that could have been Brazil 2021, like my fantasy comeback.
Easily.
I mean, seriously. Like, have that car have a touch more pace. Have a safety car too.
Yep. Yeah, have something to kind of disrupt and bunch up the pack. And Hamilton is, we know Hamilton. We know he's can go from the back of the pack to the front of the pack easy.
Easy. Okay, I'm gonna switch from Mercedes and we're gonna talk about Ferrari. I know we're talking a lot about the big three today, but I mean that's really what the upgrades have led us to kind of do. But one thing that we have to talk about is after the race, Charles Leclerc said we cannot afford for this to happen. So no team can ever afford for there to be a DNF. But realistically, how true is this statement for Ferrari in their battle with Red Bull and their future battle with Red Bull and Mercedes?
Yeah. Well, you said it. Having a DNF is the worst thing that can happen in a race weekend for the team. I mean, they shucked away 25 to, or I would say 20 to 26 solid points by having a DNF. And we need every point that's possible to be in this battle with Red Bull and for it to continue. There's nothing that I can say other than we cannot be DNFing. And I think it is very realistic that Charles is saying this and is saying that, we're not going to be able to compete for this championship if we continue to have issues with the vehicle.
I mean, I think this is kind of a statement that literally all three of the top teams could have made this weekend.
Could stand behind. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, look, we had Charles DNF, we had Max have no DRS, and we had both Mercedes struggling with, we had a water leak, then we have the car overheating. I get that this is, the Barcelona temperatures were outrageous, but I mean, reliability might be the make or break at the end of the season. I mean, you could get into a scenario where it's now Ferrari and Mercedes battling it out, and it's those two Max Verstappen DNFs that happened way back at the beginning of the season that are going to play a factor at the end. I think reliability is the name of the game here right now. And developing the car to prevent reliability is a massive problem.
Yeah, and I mean, like we said earlier, that this race we didn't have any safety cars, and so we saw the cars going full throttle, and we saw numerous issues. That all comes down to development and reliability. Go ahead. And making sure the car can finish the race in one piece, scoring points.
I really wonder if we had a safety car for all of them to kind of cool the cars a bit, it would have impacted the end of race, because those cars were going full out in those temperatures and they never had that reprieve at all.
Yeah, they never had a break.
They never had a lift and coast moment until they were forced to lift and coast at the end. Or, I mean, Lewis Hamilton was forced to lift and coast and give up that position back to Carlos Sainz. I do want to note about Ferrari. So in the Charles Leclerc situation, it was lap 27. Charles had an 11-second advantage when all of a sudden the car just slowed.
Just stopped running. And you could hear the little or hiss or something that had gone down. The power had gone down.
It was the worst sound ever. I just can't imagine Charles in that car being and it's over.
And that's it. He was like, no. He knew it was coming. Ferrari, at the time of us recording, does not have an answer to what happened in the power unit. They are sending it back to Maranello for an investigation and really an explanation. But after the race, Binotto said that it was a sudden issue. He said, I think we learned it first from Charles, first going on the radio, and then from the engineers looking at the data. So it was really sudden. So the fact that it was just and over is very, very, very troubling for Ferrari. I mean, full stop, because there's no indication that it's occurring. So that's terrifying going into Monaco and really the rest of the season. If you're not getting any warning bells or alarms letting you know that there's a problem ahead of there being a problem. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have the reliability, you should at least have the warnings to let you know what's going wrong.
We at least want to be aware of when the car is about to shit the bed.
Yes, exactly. Give us that warning so we can have a moment to ourselves to say our sorrows and move on.
Okay, Katie, I have one last question to you before we move into our winners and losers, because I think we kind of covered our race question about the safety car quite a bit.
Yeah.
So, Katie, did Verstappen's DRS troubles make the case to keep DRS or make the case to get rid of DRS? Like, did it help? Was it a factor? Like, did it even change the conversation?
Yeah, flat out, we need DRS. Like, that's how I feel about it. I saw, like, not only the frustration that Max was having following, who was it that he was following?
George Russell.
In that moment. George Russell, thank you. And you could see the anger and the frustration building because he needed that extra little push and he wasn't able to have it. So, I mean, the whole point of these new formula cars is that it's been made easier to follow and overtake, but you still need that little burst, that little NOS fuel of DRS.
No, I definitely agree that I think it kind of proves the point why we need it. Honestly, I mean, here's the deal. I loved the battle between George and Max. Like, when I tell you that it was like one of those moments when you're watching F1 and you're like, this is why I love F1. Like, it's the strategy, it's the impressive defense. Like, George Russell was the British Minister of Defense. Like, is he the British, like, James Bond? Like, I don't know. He was putting the car, he was making it wide, he was making it tricky for Max, but with DRS, Max would have been able to do it quicker, but then George would have had DRS and been able to get him as well. Like, it would have been interesting to see, like, being able to compare, like, a couple of laps without the DRS in Max with, wow, it would have been interesting to compare the battle without DRS for a couple of laps and then with DRS for a couple of laps instead of it just like intermittently working. I will say that the comedy factor of Max Verstappen's radio messages was just iconic. The best is when they were basically like, hit it after the curb, and he's like, I'm pressing it 50 times to get it. And they're like, just press it once. It was like this was literally the equivalent of just being like, turn it off and on. And he's like, I've got to fucking press it a ton of times to make it work. And they're like, just press it once. He's like, what?
It was messy. It was messy to watch. That is for sure.
It was messy, but it was so funny.
So entertaining. So entertaining.
I will say that that's how I know that in those, like, I know that in that moment I would be acting like Max too, though. So, like, I have to give Max, like, a little slack on this one. I know. I can't believe I'm just admitting that I'm giving Max slack.
It's well-deserved slack. I mean, to not have DRS and in a battle, like, he deserves a little slack.
He deserves some slack. Okay. Honestly, I kind of thought about having Max being my winner because he was able to like maximize without the DRS, but I did not. I know Katie's probably picked Max though, right?
Max, yes. I picked Max mainly just because it was an incredible race to watch him, you know, have some of his angry driving, to have some of his extra battles. I know we don't always love Max, but incredible race, incredible driving, and finally got that DRS to work and has finished in first place every race that he's finished thus far this season. So he's here defending his championship that was wrongly given to him.
I will admit that I thought about Red Bull, I thought about Verstappen, I thought about Mercedes, I thought about Ocon, I thought about Hamilton, I thought about Norris, Vettel, Schumacher. I thought about a lot of people for my winners. Some people that, you know, others might not claim were actual winners, but I ended up going Fernando Alonso.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. Weird kind of choice for me. Not in my normal, like, but I went for this for a couple of reasons. So he started P20 back of the grid after a horrible qualifying that really wasn't his fault. You know, he was P17, not really his fault, like I said. I think the team made a great strategy call long term to replace that power unit. But again, like, he had to battle battle through the race, and he was able to battle back into the points, ending P9, solid points. Really, honestly, I probably should have gone Alpine as my winner because it was their first double points finish for the team. But I kind of had to give it to Alonso because he did have to overcome quite a lot of adversity this weekend, just like Lando Norris, who is someone else I thought about for my winner. But no, I think he deserves it. I thought about him for driver of the day as well because it could not have been easy to have to like mentally recover after a shit qualifying in front of your home race, in front of your home crowd where you want to have a great performance and people are expecting a great performance from you.
Yeah, I feel, or I know that the drivers have this weight of pressure when they're at their home race because they want to perform well for the people who love them and support them. And so I think you were spot on in choosing Fernando Alonso for your winner. All right, my loser. Another obvious choice for me this week, but it was Charles Leclerc. DNF'd out of the race is never a good thing. Fucked away 26 potential points that could have kept him in the lead of the championship, but instead he and Ferrari both lost out to Max Verstappen and Red Bull in the lead for the championship now. So Charles is my loser of the weekend.
I thought about him for loser. Thought about him. I thought about Sainz. And then I went Sergio Perez. I know, weird choice here. Another weird one for me this week because a lot of people thought that you should put Sergio Perez as a winner, but I think I'm going to go with he was a loser. And we haven't really talked about the team orders shit, and this is where I wanted to talk about it. And I kind of intentionally kept it off here because I did the planning of what we were going to say when for this episode. And here's why I'm saying he was a loser. I think he should have been able to battle. I don't care what Christian said. I don't care. I don't care that there's a lot. And truthfully, and here's why I don't care. I know there was a logical reason for the team orders. I know that there was. I know that looking at the tire delta, I know that looking at the lap times, I know looking at the temperatures, all of that. I know that looking at the fact that Max has 2 DNFs. I know looking at the fact that Ferrari's got upgrades and Mercedes is looking to battle back and they're trying to have another back-to-back world championship with Max. I get it. You can throw whatever you want at me. It is round 6. It is round 6, and Sergio Perez had a great race. He was racing hard. He wanted to invert the cars to be able to battle Russell because he was on fresher tires and was told no. He should have been. Invert the cars, let him get around Russell. And then he can hold Russell back. I think that would have been a good idea. I'm not in charge. But then, again, he was told to invert the cars so that Max could speed off to win. I'm happy for Max. I am. I hate to admit I'm happy for Max. But here's the deal. It is super annoying. And I do think that it would have been great for them to be able to battle it out in round 6. And Checo did think that. He said that in the race. I know that was in the moment. After the race, he said he wanted to have a talk. We'll never hear Checo say another bad word about it because that is the Red Bull media machine and he's media trained to fall in line. But I would have liked to see it. And I think it's really unfortunate that they didn't give him the opportunity because this is one of the opportunities where we could have seen it. You know, if this was race 16, team orders it up. But this was the chance we could have really seen a Checo Max wheel-to-wheel battle. And we could have really seen what that looks like when they're both in the same car. I think that would have been awesome. And I think it would have been a great opportunity for Checo. And truthfully, I would have loved to see a Checo victory here. And honestly, I would have liked to see a Checo victory, not because Max is out and Checo's the Red Bull last hope, but because it was on Checo's like true merits against Max.
Yeah, I completely agree. I just wish that they would at least give him the opportunity and the chance to show us what he can do and what he has. It's unfair. It's unfair
and it's annoying. But I do shout out, and this is why this is why it's so frustrating to me that like Max is so ingrained as the number one driver. He literally wears it on his fucking car and himself. But I get it. You want to have him. He's your shining star. But like in the opportunities like this weekend, I think it would have been interesting to see. And Checo wanted it. If Checo was like not pushing back, okay, fine, whatever. But Checo wanted it.
Yeah, he wanted it. He
Let him
really
race.
wanted it.
Okay. Shall we move into our honorable mention, Katie?
Yes, we shall.
Do you want to take it?
Yeah, I can talk about it. This week we chose Lando Norris. So he started P11 and finished P8. That doesn't sound super massively impressive, but he overcame a lot this weekend. First, he has tonsillitis, which I have had. I had it for months and finally got my tonsils out, and it is incredibly difficult. So he was rough before the race. He was sitting with a cool towel on the driver's parade. There was a moment where Lewis Hamilton sat down next to him and made sure he was okay. In qualifying, he missed out on Q3 due to track limits. And then he had an incident in FP2 with the gravel and the curbs, wrecking the brand new floor and the chassis. So all around rough weekend. Glad he was able to finish in the points. And he finished the race saying, "Today was tough. I was feeling really unwell before the race as I'm suffering with tonsillitis, and that, in combination with the high temperatures, made this one of the hardest races I've ever done." So proud of him. Can't wait to see him hopefully healthy in Monaco and see really what he can do, because I could see him taking a win in Monaco.
Maybe we should manifest it, get a prayer circle going.
I think we should.
What made me so sad is if you watched his onboard after the race, he like takes the steering wheel out and then he just like claps for himself.
Oh,
I would have clapped for myself if I had tonsillitis and just did that.
Yeah.
Ugh, poor baby. I say that in a kind way, not like a condescending way. Okay, let's talk about our hidden gem. Katie definitely knows that I was in charge this weekend because the hidden gem is all about that boat ass photo. And this boat ass photo is a hidden gem for two reasons. First off, because it's Valtteri boat ass's ass. That was all over social media again, and it was great. But also because Valtteri Bottas came out and said that over 5,000 people bought a print of my bum. And with that, we gathered 50,000 euros to charity. So making good with my bum. So love that. Not only was it a picture of his ass, but it was also doing something great for the community. And that's a lot of money to gather from a picture of his bum. It's a great photo. Don't worry, I have some plans for that photo. Don't worry. Just hinting at the future. And then really like the third hidden gem of this. So like first we have the photo, second we have the fact that it's doing good, and third, like the mini hidden gem was Lewis Hamilton commenting on it. He said, when asked if he would like buy a photo, he's like, "I would, yeah, for charity, for sure. I didn't even know it was up for sale, but I think it's a great photo. It's one of the best photos I've seen, actually."
Aw, buddy, the old teammate missing out.
I know, and I just like in my mind, I really truthfully think that like Valtteri at one point is going to gift Lewis the print of it, and then Lewis is gonna like hang it in his bathroom. Like that's like in my brain, that's what's gonna happen. I don't know if any of this is real. Maybe I should write to Valtteri and say like, "Hey, just a great gift idea for Louis. Maybe for Christmas. Highly recommend it. Nice frame. Sign it. Like say like, hope you like my bum." And like Lewis can hang it like above a bathtub, a toilet. Maybe like in the loo would be really nice. Oh, really would be really nice is like, next to a shower in one of Lewis Hamilton's Colorado places, because we know that Lewis loves Colorado.
Wow, you've really thought about this.
I spent a lot of time Saturday morning thinking about this because I love the photo so much. I mean, his butt looks great in that cold water.
Yeah. I mean, it's an incredible photo. Absolutely incredible.
Tiffany Cromwell,
We
snaps
need to
to
print
you.
of it. Too late, though.
Snaps to you. I think I'm going to try to find one. Okay, up next is the historic and prestigious Monaco Grand Prix in Monaco at the Circuit de Monaco. The 78-lap race takes place next Sunday, May 28th, for the 7th round of the season, and is a solid watch for Memorial Day weekend for us fans in the U.S. No work on Monday, so I think we just watch Monaco and start partying, and then we just don't stop partying until we're all the way through Memorial Day. I think I'm gonna watch at a pool. Hopefully it's warm here. Unfortunately, I just looked at the weather for Monaco this morning, and it looks like it's gonna rain. Ay caramba. There's only been 8 races where it's rained in Monaco, so maybe this will be the 9th, and if so, I swear if this is another spa, this will just really put a damper on Memorial Day weekend and will also make my liver hurt. So I will blame the weather for my inability to work on Tuesday. The first Monaco Grand Prix took place in 1950, the first year of the championship, and has been a regular race on the calendar since 1955. The circuit is literally just iconic. Iconic. That's the only word you can use to describe the circuit. It is narrow and twisty. Winning here is part of the Triple Crown of Motorsport. It is monumental for an F1 driver's career. Nelson Piquet, yeah, I had to throw this quote in there because we threw some shade at him earlier. Not we, F1 did. Described driving around Monaco as like riding a bicycle around your living room. I wouldn't recommend it at all. Overtaking is hard and tests the driver's ability, and skills have to be accurate, like incredibly accurate, to prevent touching the walls. Qualifying is key in Monaco as a result of this, and really overtaking is hard here as well. We don't see many of them. Last year was actually pretty boring. Like I said, I enjoyed qualifying more than the actual race in Monaco last year. So make sure that you are clear your calendar for Saturday, watch qualies. It's my favorite part of Monaco weekend. The last 4 Monaco Grand Prix, we have had 4 different race winners. Last year was Max Verstappen, 2019 was Hamilton, 2018 was Daniel Ricciardo, and Sebastian Vettel in 2017. Point to note here, I skipped 2020. We did not race here due to COVID. This is Charles Leclerc's home race. So will he finally break the curse? Will he find success in Monaco? Or we have another I am stupid incident? Join us next week for our race recap. Have a great week. Thank you so much for listening to another episode. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us at Dirty Driving Pod on Twitter and Instagram.
Until next time, stay dirty.